Welcome once again to Auto Mondial, the weekly home of all the latest motoring news and reviews. This week, Alfa Romeo launches one of the prettiest cars of recent times.
We've also got the latest venture of Amazon head honcho Jeff Bezos.
Plus, the Ferrari F50 celebrates 30 years of V12 fun.
That's all coming up. First though, the news.
After 5 years at the top of the Renault Group and just a few months after stating a long-term future at the organisation, Luca de Meo has stepped down as CEO of the French automotive conglomerate. Responsible for the launch of popular new models like the all-electric 5 City car and incoming 4 crossover, as well as helping to grow manufacturers Alpine and Dacia in recent years, de Meo had an immediate and impressive impact on the French automotive organisation. The Italian executive announced his shock resignation this month, leaving the Renault Group in a desperate hunt for a new chief. Tune in weeks to come to find out who eventually takes over the role.
There really is nothing like a V12 engine, is there? And when like this, that V12 can trace its roots to the wacky and wonderful world of Formula One, it can be nothing other than supremely special. This is the Ferrari F50, an underappreciated successor to the infamous Widowmaker that is the F40, and in 2025 it celebrates 30 years since its first unveiling at the 1995 Geneva Motor Show. Curvaceous and aerodynamic, the F50 is far from the jagged weapon its predecessor represents. But in the case of the Prancing Horse's 1990s Halo car, the design is far from the point. What this car is really all about is adapting Formula One tech to the road. Now that is quite the claim to fame. Powering this stunner in a flowing gown is an enlarged version of the 3.5-litre V12 Ferrari's F1 cars ran in 1990. The 4.7-litre 12-cylinder gets a total of 512 brake horsepower, pushes it to reach 62 from rest in 3.8 seconds, and sends it to a top speed of 205 miles per hour. All that while hitting all the high notes it wants. Officially, Halo Ferrari monikers preceded by the letter F have been on hiatus since the F50's inception, but internally the tradition has lived on. The Enzo, codenamed the Ferrari F60, touched the stage in 2005, whilst early on in the Ferrari LaFerrari's development, the F70 name reportedly gained traction. Now there is a new Ferrari Halo car, and this time it sticks true to the early lineage, not only with its looks but also by the name. Sporting rear wing similarities with the 30-year-old model, this is the Ferrari F80. And the Prancing Horse will hope that trick aero, fancy hybridization and eye-widening power figures will be enough to take over the mantle from what is an automotive icon.
Earlier this year, Volvo launched its mid-size SUV, the XC60, in refreshed, facelifted form, bringing slight exterior design touch-ups like a more finicky front grille, as well as an interior refresh with its overhauled central touchscreen and more streamlined Google-based infotainment software. Volvo's mid-size SUV is now better suited for the modern world.
But the XC60 isn't the only model of its kind ramping up the modernity this year, as the confusingly named Mazda CX-60 is equally refreshed. Though where the Swedes have predictably focused on passenger comfort, the Japanese have opted to enhance the model's underpinnings. In fact, the headlining tweak as part of the car's first facelift since its launch in 2022 is a retuned rear suspension setup. Softer springs and recalibrated stability system should help with stability, notably at higher speeds, making for a more relaxing motorway experience. Powering that softer ride along the road is a very much unchanged lineup of engines. At the entry point is a 3.3-litre six-cylinder diesel with mild hybrid assistance for either 200 or 250 brake horsepower. Meanwhile, the top of the range gets a plug-in hybrid e-Sky Active model, good for 325 bhp thanks to a 2.5-litre four-pot. Obviously, the latter is both far more powerful and far more efficient on fuel, and yet somehow costs pretty much the same as the larger capacity diesels, the Mazda CX-60 hitting the market from £46,700 in pretty much all forms. The Mazda CX-60's 2025 facelift isn't just a boring suspension setup tweak though, also including slightly nicer upholstery for the mid-range Homura trim level. Now the seats get Napa leather and the pillars and roof now get a nicer texture, though for the most part the cabin is the same as it always was. A sizable driver display sits nicely within the bezel behind what is a pleasingly clutter-free steering wheel. Climate controls sit below and importantly separate from the infotainment screen, which gets somewhat of a dual control switch on the centre console. The whole thing does seem a little dated versus more recent models' haptic feedback and style-less spaces, but for that reason, we do actually quite like it. Aside from a cosy decade-old approach to interior design, the Mazda also gets plush chairs and good leg and headroom in class.
Indeed, despite a Swedish design philosophy of simplicity and minimalism, the Volvo XC60 cannot quite rival the Mazda for interior space, just lacking a centimetre or two for legroom and front headroom. Thanks to a flatter roofline, you do get a smidge more headroom in the rear, though only the tallest of passengers should notice the difference. Regardless of space, there is no denying that the Mazda's Swedish rival is a sight to behold from the inside, getting all the trim and upholstery materials you could dream of for a showpiece of modern design. However, because of that form over function approach, a lot of the key functions do find themselves tucked within the infotainment screen, something that we frankly do not like. Under the shell, the Volvo also gets 3 powertrain offerings, though in this case all burning petrol. The base unit is the mild hybrid B5, good for 247 brake horsepower, but if 30 mpg is not enough for you, the plug-in hybrid T6 and T8 may well be more your speed. With 345 and 449 bhp respectively, they're both potent engines and will provide upwards of 40 miles of electric-only range. Unlike the Mazda, going for the fare will cost more than the base XC60's £48,400 price tag, the T6 starting from £55,000 and the T8 only available in £69,000 range-topping ultra trim level. That sounds like a lot for a mid-range family runabout to us.
After the break, Renault goes all out in its bid to optimise automotive efficiency. But will this concept ever make production?
Welcome back. Coming up, the Alfa Romeo 33 Stradale is reborn and just as stunning as ever.
There's no denying it, the automotive industry is changing. Internal combustion engines are being replaced by newfangled battery tech, meaning exhaust fumes are gone, and in their stead is the water vapour of a distant nuclear power plant. All in the name of cutting carbon emissions. But there's still a long way to go for personal motoring to become a sustainable part of human life, and that's where concepts come in. What you're looking at here is the Renault EMBLEME concept, a futuristic vision of the family SUV of tomorrow. Think of it then as the next Renault Scenic. Certainly a striking little ugly duckling, with its bold 22-inch wheel design, drooping front end and messy tail, the EMBLEME may not fit the bill of an understated daily wagon, but there is method to the madness. In fact, those flat face wheels are designed to minimise drag, as is the sloping nose. An aerodynamic shape, the car is supposed to cut through the air like a knife, in turn extending range and using less energy. As you would expect, this new age creation is powered by an electric powertrain, though more complex than you would think. Where typical battery electrics use rare earth minerals and destructive mining practices, this model's battery gets a cleaner construction, reducing its carbon footprint by 72%. That BEV tech is paired with a hydrogen fuel cell, extending the EMBLEME's range further, north of 620 miles in fact. That sounds distinctly like a new age form of hybridization to us. It's not just the powertrain that makes this new model eco-friendly, as Renault has put a lot of effort into ensuring its production process and recyclability are as clean as possible. Supposedly, the production of all the EMBLEME's parts represents a 70% reduction in carbon footprint over the production of a regular car, with over half of the materials used in its production being recycled. Whilst we are unsure if the Renault EMBLEME itself will ever reach production, the word on the street is that the French car maker is looking to introduce its powertrain underpinnings by the year 2035. So it seems that in just a decade, the world will once again be transitioning, but this time from electric to hydrogen.
Amazon has made a pickup truck. You heard it here first. Well, sort of, that is. Jeff Bezos, founder of the online commerce site, has turned his hand to the automotive industry to unveil the SLATE truck, a bare-bones back-to-basics pickup truck dropping the frills of the modern motoring world in favour of a circa $20,000 price tag. How is it so cheap, you ask? Well, out of the box you essentially get the absolute basics for a vehicle. Physical window winders and steel wheels are a reminder of the model's back-to-basics approach. Packaged within this compact two-door is either a 52.7 or 84.3 kilowatt-hour battery, in either case powering a 201 brake horsepower motor on the rear axle. Despite its low price, the SLATE does offer somewhat disappointing towing and payload capacities at just 450 and 650 kilos respectively, not exactly what you'd expect from an American pickup for the people. In fact, to overcome the American motorist, SLATE will have quite the battle on its hands given the popularity of a certain Blue Oval bestseller.
This is the Ford F-150, and for the last 4 decades it has not only been the most popular pickup stateside, but it has also topped overall charts year on year. Setting you back at least twice that of the SLATE, however, with its $39,500 starting price, you do wonder if there is something to be said for the new EV as a workhorse for less demanding lifestyles. For the extra money, you get a far larger truck with both extra space inside and more storage in the longer bed. The Ford is also a more imposing beast on the open road, standing taller above the punia of road users. Under the enlarged bonnet, Ford's F-150 sports a variety of internal combustion engines. 325 brake horsepower is your base option from a 2.7-litre twin-turbo V6, whilst the middle range gets a 5-litre V8 and 400 brake. The range-topping unit is a 3.5-litre V6, available in either pure combustion 400 brake horsepower tune or with an additional 47 brake hybrid unit. Even in entry-level spec, the Ford will tow almost 5 times more than the Slate. So all of a sudden, that price hike between the two doesn't sound quite so shocking, does it? Inside, you also get a few more luxuries over its electric comrade. Storage cubbies throughout add to the large bed in the back, whilst the F-150's crew cab design allows for greater passenger space. Where the Slate gets a simple phone holder as standard, the Ford's dash boasts a 12-inch infotainment screen running the freshest Sync software. In lower trim levels, you get easy clean rubber upholstery, perfect for the workplace, but upper echelons of the F-150 price list provide almost a tinge of luxury in their upholstery and cabin design. Ultimately, the Slate does not sit in the same space as the Ford F-150. Providing cheap electric motoring to the American masses, it isn't the rugged workhorse that the Ford has proven to be over the last half-century. But if all you want is a cheap and cheerful EV for your commuting with a bolstered look, the new addition to the Bezos empire could well be a consideration when it launches in 2027.
At the top of the show, we presented an underrated Italian stunner celebrating 30 years of drop-dead gorgeous looks and a stunning soundtrack to boot. But when you think of Italian beauty, surely one model in particular should spring to mind. Bold shapes and imposing stance, eye-catching door hinges and iconic lines, the Alfa Romeo 33 Stradale beautifully blends the line between functional race car and emotional work of art. First taken to public roads in 1967, the Alfa Romeo 33 Stradale is a road-going variant of one of Alfa's most successful race cars in history.
But if you were too busy in gestation or at school during the late 1960s instead of earning your fortune and weren't able to claim one of the 18 examples built, you are in luck. Because in 2025, there's a new one. Front, back, left, right, and even from above. Every angle of Alfa Romeo's latest return to the supercar space is absolutely drop-dead gorgeous. Perfectly blending recognisable cues from its 1960s muse, but also integrating a touch of modernity with sharp angles, intricate details, and the most up-to-date of materials. The 2025 33 Stradale is already an icon in the making. Within old-school bold and bulbous headlights reside fresh and current LED streaks. The flowing and timeless rear bumper is in fact made up of endless sharp aerodynamic devices akin to any other performance car of today. A golden wheel design recounting the glory days of motoring are in fact more complex than first meets the eye. These are just some of the examples of the 33's fantastic blend of past and present. Inside, however, the Italian manufacturer has done all it can to maintain the model's timelessness, even going to the effort of hiding its infotainment touchscreen within the dash until required. The touchscreen is gone, and so too are cheap haptic feedback controls, as this cabin gets metallic switches on both the centre console and ceiling that appear to be straight out of a vintage aeroplane. Gorgeously upholstered seats, exquisite aluminium trim, and splendid windows akin to the original 33, you can tell the design team at Alfa Romeo had fun with this one. Now, it isn't just about the frock when it comes to the latest Alfa Romeo supercar, as underneath it shares many components with the absolutely potent Maserati MC20. So it's fair to say this newest Italian has the bite to back up its bark. Though an all-electric model is available with over 750 brake horsepower, we do expect most customers to opt for the more tuneful 3-litre twin-turbo V6, pumping out an equally respectable 620 bhp. Plenty of ponies for the rear wheels to cope with. That means 62 from a standstill happens in less than 3 seconds, and the car will top out at over 200 miles an hour. Where power comes from a reworked Maserati engine, the 33 Stradale's suspension is homework handed over by the Giulia GT AM, the saloon's hottest form. So you would expect the Stradale to be rather proficient on track. Well, you cannot have your cake and eat it. And so, for all its beauty, power and performance, the Alfa Romeo 33 Stradale must have its downsides, and topping the list will be its price. Shrouded in secrecy, most estimates place this modern-day automotive artwork around the £1.5 million mark. But that is before you select any form of optional extra on your way to creating a truly unique specification. With just 33 examples ever set to leave the factory, all going for that sort of price, don't ever expect to see one outside your social media feed. If you do, count yourself lucky and simply admire what Italy can do when it puts its mind to it.
Next time on Auto Mondial, Alpine lets its hydrogen-powered beast out of its cage and onto the open track.